All right, folks. Good morning. Welcome to Jira Service Management Fundamentals webinar. My name is Connor McNeil with Expium. I'm a senior technical consultant here. And today, excuse me, I'm going to be walking you guys through some fundamentals about Jira Service Management, how it's set up, some basic functions out in for both customer interface as well as the agent side of the world, and just kind of some basic administration functionality as well. If you're not familiar with Jira Service Management, it is a, kind of a support and tracking tool for issue management. It is a product that sits on top of the already existing Jira infrastructure. So if you're familiar with Jira, which is Atlassian's kind of task management software, Jira Service Management is just another type of Jira project, essentially, that includes things like a customer portal, things like SLAs, and some additional automation functionality, as well as the ability to connect to a knowledge base and have a native integration there with article suggestions, things like that. And so again, Jira is just kind of this workflow engine sitting on top of the database, backend database. And so we can do all kinds of things with it. We can customize it, really dress it out and, make it perfect for your customer experience, for your agents to use it. And we'll walk through some of that functionality and what that can look like here in a bit. There are some more advanced Jira Service Management features. We're going to be covering these in depth in our webinar next week that Brian's going to be teaching. I believe it's on the 16th, Thursday morning, 11 a.m. Central Time, same as this one. And in that, Brian will be digging a lot deeper into incident management functionality in Opsgenie, more of the change management capabilities, CI/CD pipeline integrations with continuous integration, continuous deployment, which more geared towards supporting a number of DevOps applications. So if you're using anything from Jenkins, Bitbucket, Git, all of those things are supported, and he'll talk more about that next Thursday. And then the other thing that he'll dig more into, which we'll touch on a little bit today, is the Insight asset and object management tool. It's a built-in native integration tool that allows you to manage configuration items, manage assets, manage CRMs, all that stuff. So he'll talk about that as well next week. This webinar, we're going to talk more about kind of the fundamentals of Jira Service Management and how it's designed. So a little bit about us before we get rolling. Expium is a Platinum Solutions partner. That's kind of why we put on this webinar. We've got years of experience with effectively using Jira for over 10 years now as a company. And so we're very familiar with what can be done in the Atlassian suite and Atlassian products. And we kind of offer three to four main avenues of services. First is training, which includes this webinar, obviously, but we also do a lot more in-depth boot camps, something called a Jira Boot Camp, which is a full administration training where we take you from not really knowing the tool to being able to administrate your own instance in 3 days. We do Confluence Boot Camp, same thing, but it's kind of a one-day class. We have custom training, so that can be Jira Service Management custom training, any other, your product pipelines, Bitbucket, other Atlassian products, all that stuff. We can do that both private and public trainings. And so if you're interested in public trainings, those are on our website at expium.com. Under the training tab, you can kind of see all the list of trainings that we offer, including this webinar and next week's webinar. The next service is licensing. So we do no-cost licensing service where we will co-term and align your licenses to all fall under a single annual. And then as a Platinum Solutions partner, we have the ability to offer, most often offer discounts on that licensing. And so it's a no-cost option. It takes some of the effort off of your hands. We basically put all the licensing together and send you a single invoice, so you have a single billing point. We make sure you never lose your instance. So oftentimes, if something happens with your billing process, you can lose your billing and and lose your licenses. We will bridge that gap as a partner and make sure you guys always have a stable license process. And then we do offer really in-depth consulting. And so we do large-scale implementations for both large and small companies, everything from the Atlassian suite to even connecting to external products like Teams, like Git, like Jenkins, all that stuff, as well as, your internal, HR programs, maybe Workday integrations, timesheet integrations, stuff like that. So we offer a pretty comprehensive consultative service. And so please feel free to reach out if you guys need help or need support with anything related to Atlassian or other development needs. And then lastly, we do custom solutioning. And so our parent company is Oasis Digital Solutions, which is a full stack software development company. And so we actually have, because of who our parent company is, it enables us to build custom solutions for companies that nobody else can do. And so that allows us to build custom apps to connect to software that's sometimes behind the firewall or sometimes doesn't have an existing integration. We can build applications to bridge that gap. And so that's something that we leverage the Jira and Atlassian APIs for. And oftentimes it also leads to building custom front ends for Atlassian customers. Like if you see the portal, the Jira Service Management portal, and you're like, we'd really like that to look more like our other products, we can actually skin that custom portal and build out basically a custom interface for your customers. So that's a little bit about us. Without further ado, we can go ahead and jump into our webinar. So we're going to be starting out on the customer side in the Jira Service Management portal. And so what we see here is basically this is our top level help center that the customers will be accessing the first time they hit Jira Service Management. And so we've got 3 service desks in here right now that are currently accessible to me as a customer. We've got an IT service desk, we've got a facilities service desk, and we've got an HR service desk. All 3 of these contain very different requests that serve very different functions. And you've got all of these, different teams working in the back end. And so from here, I can go, okay, if I have a problem, something that's going to be an IT problem, I can click into that IT service desk. And right off the bat, we see a couple things. We've got a few different groups of requests here. Within each of these, there's multiple requests, for applications, request new software, report system problems, request changes. For computers, we can report broken hardware, request new computer, request new software, stuff like that. Service infrastructure, we can do change requests, incidents, and then we can request login updates, password updates, things like that. So within each of these, there's all these different request types, each one having their own custom form with their own custom fields associated with it. At the top, we'll see this little pop-up here, this little status update. And so one of the nice things about Jira Service Management is it natively integrates with all the other Atlassian products, one of those being status page. And so when an incident occurs, instead of getting a dozen tickets for the same problem, you can actually have status page show basically a little notification here that says, hey, we're experiencing some problems. So if somebody comes in to report an incident like, oh, the network's down, maybe they're pulling this up on their phone or something, they can jump into view the status page and basically say, oh, it's down because blah, blah, blah. We're tracking some incidents with Zoom. Maybe Zoom's not working and we're connected to those products. We can see all the ongoing incidents right here. We can see, basically the website uptime. Okay, there's an incident back here, major outage for 3 hours. We can see all past incidents, things like that. And so you can link to that right off the top of your service desk, and that basically will deflect tickets away from your service desk, thereby freeing up your agents to spend more time doing more important stuff, right? So if our incident that we're seeing isn't captured here in the status update, we can go ahead and, as a customer, submit a ticket. So for example, let's say my laptop is broken. I would come into this report broken hardware, come in here and say, my laptop is broken. Okay, what happened? Dropped it down the stairs. Bummer. Now we've got, we can just have this affected hardware. We can say what it is. Okay, it's a MacBook, 16-inch screen, whatever. I'm not really a MacBook guy. This is, let's say Lenovo. Or we can actually connect to like we talked about earlier, our Insight CMDB. And so in here, I can go, okay, I can build a field that automatically searches that CMD for my personal devices. And so right here, got my ThinkVision. Well, maybe I should 27-inch. That's not a laptop, that's a monitor, but it's fine. So basically we've got we can grab, it'll go into the CMDB and look for my specific devices and pop them right out here. So if I drop my phone, I can select that. If it's MacBook, I can select that. You know, it's super, super easy to fill out. Below that, we can add some attachments, maybe some pictures showing what happens, showing the broken device. And then we've got some urgency items. So maybe, you know, I might be on the sales side, and maybe I've got some sales calls coming up that are really critical. And so this might actually be really critical for me to get a replacement laptop. Maybe I'm kind of a high profile employee. There's just things that I have to get done that are very time sensitive. The second field is, you know, these are just two common fields we use. Again, keep in mind, this whole thing is customized to just build this out as an example. The second one is usually an impact. How big is the impact of this problem? And so in this case, well, it's minor localized, right? I mean, this isn't affecting the entire organization. This is just affecting my computer, you know, but it is critical to get fixed. And using those two fields, and the agent can make a judgment call on what the priority should be. And normally we don't allow the customer to set our agent's priorities, right? We want to protect their time, but they can use these fields to gauge what the priority should be on their end. And then we have the ability to share this either with our organization. So I can share it with all of my Expium organizations, so all the other customers can see I broke my laptop, or I can have this one just be a private request, service request. The place where this becomes really useful is if you have an incident that, let's say, is a network outage, and you're creating an instance saying, hey, our network's down. And maybe in order to prevent dozens of requests for the same thing from coming in, you can say, okay, I'm going to share this with my whole organization. And they'll see that, hey, this ticket was created. It's an incident saying our network's down. So you don't have to go in and create your own ticket. So for now, we're going to do this one as a private. So I'm going to go ahead and submit this request. And this one is going to now create a ticket in the agent side so that they can see, hey, this broke. And you'll see the status. This one's sitting open. You'll see all the information that I put in here. And you'll see obviously the device name in that field. It's going to fill that in. And then over here on the right side, we've got some options. You know, for some types of tickets, maybe we'll be allowed to escalate, maybe we'd be allowed to close it ourselves. But for incidents, we're not going to be allowed to do much as a customer because the agents are going to need to take a look at it. We can turn on and off notifications here. And then we can also share it with others. So maybe I want to share this with my manager. So I can tag, I'll throw Vicky in here. Maybe I'll share that with her. And so she can see, hey, my laptop's broken. She'll see the ticket. She can chime in with anything that may be relevant. Let's say it's some time's gone by and no response. I can, as the customer, come in here and add a message for the agents, say, any progress on a new laptop. Or maybe I can just specify something like needs to have, something, maybe needs to have a new mouse as well, stuff like that. You can just chime in with that additional information. You'll see this wiki markup here, all this available stuff. We can format with, we can add links, we can add attachments in here, code snippets, all that stuff can be put in here to this comment field as that back and forth communication begins to occur. And so you get a nice clean activity tracking, and it's all tracked right here on the ticket. Last couple things as a customer, if you come up here to the top right, you'll see both your profile icon. You can make updates to your profile, but next to it, we'll see this 11 requests. And this is where we can see all of our past requests. We can both see requests that I created, but also Jira Service Management supports in the portal approvals, right? And so we can basically see, okay, I've got 6 approvals that need to be done. I can click that and see, oh, I've got a bunch of tickets open that need to be approved. So let's say, okay, broken keyboard, Brian submitted a request, said, okay, for this MacBook, his MacBook Pro broke, the keyboard's no longer working and he needs an approval. I can come in here and go, oh yeah, I can go ahead and approve this guy right here in the portal. And I don't have to have a Jira Service Management license to do this approval, which is really important. You'll notice on this particular ticket, there's a couple of customer options here. These are transition options. And what these are, the way these are enabled is actually through the settings in the Service Desk, which we'll actually talk about here in a little bit. You can actually make customer visible transitions. These are most valuable when somebody submits a request, a customer submits a request, and they realize they don't need it anymore. They can go ahead and cancel it. And that way it takes it right off of your agent's plate and they no longer have to see it. So I'll show you guys where these are configured in a little bit when we get a little bit deeper in there. Back up here, I can see all the ones created by me. I can obviously filter these down by, what status they're in. I can say, okay, created by me or created by anyone that I can see, right? Because maybe I didn't create a ticket, but I can see it. And then you can filter down by, you know, specific requests. So maybe I just want to see my broken hardware request. Well, there's the one that, you know, just created with all my information in it, stuff like that. All right. So that's kind of the extent to which the customer will really be interacting with this portal. And it's really a nice, clean interface, and it's something that we've really been excited with all the features that Atlassian has continued to tweak and expand on out here. But now we're going to actually step into another role. We're going to put on our agent hat here. And so if you have agent privileges or you're licensed in the product, you can actually go up here to the breadcrumbs, and you can click on this issue key, and it will navigate you straight into the agent side to this ticket. And you'll notice when we do so, suddenly there's a lot more information here. Okay, so this is the back end or the agent side of a service desk ticket. So first off, we'll see all the information that was entered during the creation process. You'll see our affected equipment here. And this is, again, this little info panel is linked directly to Insight. And so we can expand this and see all the details. We can see the status. We can see all of that information, right? It's pretty great. We can see the description here. We've got obviously the summary up here of what the problem is. And then we have this little link here to go back out to the portal if we wanted to view it in the portal. Up here at the top, we have our standard, you know, action buttons. We can create subtasks on this ticket. Maybe I need somebody to look into something for me. We can create a major incident. I mean, this incident is a pretty simple one, maybe just a laptop broken. But if a incident comes in that the website's down, that's a big deal, especially if you're a sales-oriented organization. So you could straight from here create what's called a major incident that would take you over into the Opsgenie side. And Brian will talk more about Opsgenie later on, but just note that functionality is right here at your fingertips. We can also link other issues. So let's say this same customer, or let's say two people submit tickets for the network being down. You could link those tickets together, maybe even close one out as a duplicate and share the other one with the customer that submitted that ticket so that they can track that progress there. The linking and ticket linking is really, really powerful. And then we've got a couple of add-on or additional functionality items. We can add some tempo timesheets plans and start tracking time here, or we can add some custom forms for maybe the customer to fill out. So maybe we've got a form that's like a device request form that we want to send them, like, hey, fill out your, you know, what exactly you need. Do you need, you know, what size laptop do you want? What brand? What OS? Do you need any peripherals? Are you going to need mice? Things like that. We can build out like custom forms and send those out to them to gather that information as well. So that's kind of the ticket information right here and some functionality. Down here below, you'll see that activity section. And so this gives us, we basically have two main options here. We can add internal comments that are only visible to agents, or as an agent, we can reply to the customer. So I'm going to go ahead and make a reply to the customer. I'm going to say, we will make sure and include a new mouse, you know, and tack that in here. Okay, so that dialogue will begin to happen back and forth, right? And if somebody has created this ticket via email, this adding a comment as an agent will fire off an email to them, and you'll see that. Little detail there to keep in mind is in this case, even though I'm acting as both customer and agent, I won't receive any emails for any of these things because the actor does not, you know, if something is triggered by you, it doesn't send you an email for your own comment, which I appreciate. Jira is smart enough to not do so. So if you are doing some testing, make sure you have two different users to make sure emails do get sent. Little minor tidbit there. All right, so now we get into the more agent information. So over here on the right side, we'll see our status along with our transition options. So we can run this thing into work in progress. We can cancel it. We can resolve it once it gets fixed. So we'll go ahead and bump this thing into in progress. So works in progress. I'm going to assign it to myself, and I'm going to start the investigation, right? Now this particular incident doesn't require much investigation. So let's say, you know, if I go ahead and actually just refresh this page here, what you'll see over here on the right side is that these SLAs are ticking away. Now, because I was also the customer, this SLA didn't pause because it thinks I'm just the customer responding, and this is set to only an agent responding to turn this SLA off. So this is a kind of a special case. Normally this time to first response SLA would then complete, and we would have met our SLA perfectly. The next SLA that's ticking is our time to resolution SLA. This basically means for an incident of priority low, we have 4 hours basically to resolve this incident. If potentially we could tie our SLAs to the priority and basically say, okay, let's bump this priority a little bit. It's going to go up to high here. And maybe we drive our SLA off of this. We could have it drop to 2 hours or 1 hour, even if it's really a critical, if we put on critical. Down here below, we can see the assignee and the reporter. Obviously, they're the same. We can see what request type it was. We can see our priority. We can set severity here. If we've got an incident that's going to have, let's say it has more widespread consequences, we could set a Sev 4, stuff like that, and have our severity running. That's all internal stuff. You can decide on those for your own organizations. Below that, you'll see this we have a related article here in the knowledge base. This is also, we'll talk about this a little bit more. This is one of my favorite integrations for Jira Service Management, is its integration to Confluence. And so it's going to look at the content of this ticket and go, you know what, there's an article that might be helpful. In this case, probably not. Okay, there's an article about the postmortem for a website being down. So let's say, in this case, let's say this incident was about the web store, right? And they're like, oh, hey, we noticed the web store was down. What was the problem with that? What caused it? We have this postmortem handy, and we can in fact use this little share as comment button. Click that, and it'll automatically put the link to that Confluence article right here in the comment. Okay. Now, maybe this is an internal documentation, so we wouldn't share it with them. But if it was relevant, we could actually, without even spending any time on this ticket, we could instantly answer their question by sharing this article. And this will become more relevant for some other request types, especially when there's like hey, can you help me set up a VPN? Maybe we have an how-to article for that we can share out to them and immediately deflect the ticket. So that's our knowledge base integration. And so that's one of the key points that I want to focus on, is making sure that when you build out Jira Service Management, you leverage that knowledge base capability. It's one of the most valuable functions that we have, and it can really lead to a healthy service process. When we're deflecting tickets away from our agents, it can reduce the workload on your agents, and just make the whole process a lot smoother for your customers, where they can just do self-help out in the portal instead of always submitting a ticket for repetitive things. You'll see our request participants. You remember I added Vicky out there in the portal as a customer. The agent can also see that here on the back end. And then we can see what organizations it's shared with. Right now, it's not shared with any organizations because we want to keep it private. We can see any linked alerts that came through OpsGenie for this incident. We don't have any in this one. And then we can see our automation and tempo timesheets tracking. And then there's all kinds of other fields that aren't filled in currently. So this is kind of what the agent side works and looks like. So right here, I can go ahead and go, okay, this is resolved. And I'll add a comment, reply to customer, PC shipped with mouse. Let us know if there are any problems. Okay, so the key here is we actually talk about this concept of a two-step close. So you'll notice there's a resolve, completed status, but there's also a closed status, and we're not in that closed status yet. The reason is we want to say this thing is resolved and get it out of our queue, but we don't want to shut off the request for the customer in case they come back and say, hey, the PC arrived broken. In that case, we would come up here and we'd reopen this ticket and send them a new one, start the return process, things like that. But if they come back and they say, and you'll notice these two SLAs shut off, but we have a new one. This is the time to close after resolution. So this problem has been resolved. We've sent them a PC. If they come back and they say, hey, great, PC arrived, all good. Then we come here and we can hit close. We can close this ticket out. If they come back and say, hey, there's something wrong, we can jump back to work in progress. In this case, we'll just assume the PC was good. No problem. So we'll go ahead and close this ticket. And now that SLA will complete here in a second once this page refreshes, and we'll have met all of our SLAs. So pretty neat process. This is kind of that agent day-to-day work process. The next piece for the agents is going to be where they're getting their tickets from, right? What's their method for triage? What's their method for knowing what they're working on? And that's when we get into queues. And so if we jump back to the project list here, we've got basically 5 sections for queues. We've got our general queues that are going to be basically all open tickets, or in this case, all my tickets. This is going to be all the tickets assigned to me. Well, we just closed out that ticket that was assigned to me. But let's say I take one of these open tickets and I say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and assign this one to myself. Now, for all of the agents in the service desk, they can just be checking their all my tickets queue. That can kind of be their primary. And right here, they can basically see all the tickets they're working on, and they can see their SLAs, time to resolution SLAs expiring. And this allows them to easily prioritize by SLA to basically say, okay, the tickets that are closest to their SLAs expiring are the tickets I'm going to work on first, right? And then down here, you can actually just look at your team queues, maybe some open tasks. These are internal tasks, not tickets, that have popped up that need to be addressed. We got some warranties that are coming up on expiration for some devices out there. So we would use these to trigger a ticket out to a customer and say, hey, your laptop warranty is going to expire. We want to order you a brand new one. Most people aren't going to complain about that, right? Below that, we've got SLA, tracking for all tickets. And this is going to be basically more of a manager queue or dashboard where they can come in here and they can sort by, whatever they need to sort by, and just basically track both of these, both of our big SLAs, which are our time to first response and our time to resolution SLAs. But all of these queues can be fully customized. And so those are kind of our general queues. Below that, we've got our specific queues, and we've got 4 different types of intake into this project. We've got service requests, which are going to be your day-to-day password resets, new devices, stuff like that. We've got incidents, which is something broke, right? Whether it's a network problem, whether it's an outage, whether it's a website down, or even just broken hardware, like we just created a broken laptop. That's going to fall under our incident queue. And under incidents, we can see my incidents, again, are incidents that are assigned to me. We can see all open incidents. Looks like there's 3 right now, and we can see, our recently resolved last 7 days resolved, and you'll see that laptop that we just resolved here. And then we've got our major incidents, right? So we've got one ongoing major incident, which means we've got the loyalty program services down. This is a P2, and it's open right now. We can fire up a lot of functions here. And again, I'll let Brian touch on these next week because we don't have enough time in just one webinar to hit everything. There's a lot of features in here. But this is the ability to just jump in here and see ongoing incident, and we can see any past major incidents that have been created. We've got, back in the past, we've had the website go down. We've had, these are all, of course, fake incidents, but it's a cool way to be able to check back and see, what happened. We can use these for even as their own knowledge base. When something happens, an agent can jump in here and say, hey, has this happened before? And they can use that history. We can write postmortems and have all that documented, as you guys saw. So pretty neat. This is our incident section. Below incidents, we've got our problems. Problems are going to be what, typically what causes incidents, right? And so when we have a bunch of incidents come in, from that incident, we'll go ahead and create a problem, and we'll link all those incidents up to that problem, and we'll work the problem as an engineering team, And once we've solved the problem, we can trickle down to all those incidents that are linked to it and say, hey, I know this incident was caused by this problem. Well, we fixed this problem. So now we can close out these incidents. Let us know if you see this again or it occurs again, and come back in and create a new incident. And so these are going to be our open problems. So we've got a problem open right now that's, that loyalty service keeps going down. And so that's an open problem that's being worked actively. And then we've got any problems assigned to me, which I don't have any at the moment. So that's our problem queue. And then lastly, we've got our change queues. These are going to be, open changes. Maybe they're, password changes, or not really password changes, but like software changes, like, or maintenance changes or website upgrades, all kinds of stuff that could be coming in here as changes. And then we've got our closed changes. And these are going to be, you'll see a ton of deployment changes in here. These are actually being automatically triggered by commits in Bitbucket, triggering change requests here, both standard and normal. So the standard ones are requiring approvals. So we can take a look at any of these and we can see, hey, this is a normal change, and it, if we come down here to our activity, we can see, oh, Brian approved this change, and we can track our change approvals. We can see who approved it and when, and then it gets, it'll basically approve that deployment. It'll deploy out to production, right? And so what this allows us to do is if an incident occurs, and I don't want to get too deep in here, but if an incident occurs with the mobile app, it'll actually automatically track back to the latest deployment and apply it as a potential cause that we can investigate. It's pretty cool automation setup there. So this is going to be our kind of our change management queue here. Okay, so, and then below that, of course, down here, and this is all stuff that Brian will cover more. We've got our links to those various things. We can jump into our change calendar and see scheduled changes. We can see all of our services that are in play, mobile app, payroll, email, all that stuff, and track responders there. We can track our alerts, and that's going to link us out to OpsGenie, which is going to be our incident management tool. And then we can look at our on-call schedules, which again is OpsGenie as well. And we can see who's currently on call, and we can set up on-call schedules, make exceptions, holidays, stuff like that. Okay, so that's going to be kind of our more advanced ops stuff. that's really, really neat and stuff that Brian's going to touch on next week. Below that, we've got our knowledge section. This is going to be your knowledge base and reporting sections, okay? And these are really, really critical as an agent to be able to check back and see, okay, what's happened before? Is there things I can check on? You know, post-incident reviews, I can look at, you know, post-mortem reports that have happened. I can see, you know, okay, how to, maybe a ticket comes in asking, how do I add gift cards to the website? Well, we've got an article for that, you know, and we can just send that article directly to the customer. And then this also allows you to create new articles. You know, let's say you get a ticket and as an agent, you're like, man, I keep getting the same ticket. It's really easy to do. Nobody's, you know, there's no article for it. And I can come in here, create a new article. You can set up an approval process for those articles. And then you can also track viewership. So if you say like, okay, you know, such and such an article is getting 0 views. You know, one, you can make sure it's actually showing up on the right request, but 2, maybe it's just, you know, has a terrible title, you know, and you can fix the title and you can track all that information here and you get the statistics right here, which is pretty neat. And then you can say, see when they were last updated. So like there's some of these that are a year old and you can even have a process to come in here and update, you know, stale articles that maybe have old information in them, things like that. And then of course we can categorize these articles. We can also see any drafts here, you know, articles that were started, and we can add additional categories of articles so that, you know, users have a really clear, like, okay, this article is about, you know, applications. This article is troubleshooting. This is a frequently asked questions articles. And we can categorize those really easily and have them show up out in the portal. Okay. So that's the knowledge base side. Super important, super critical. Cannot stress that enough to take the time to build out a good Confluence knowledge base. Below that, we've got our reports. So within the reporting side, we've got a bunch of unique reports to Jira Service Management. The first one and one of the most useful is the workload report. This is going to look at all your agents and go, hey, how many issues does everybody kind of have in play right now? So I've got one, Vicky's got a couple. And in a real service desk, you would see, you know, everybody's got dozens. And this is a really quick way to see if one person is just carrying the load and has way too much on their plate, or if you've got a bunch of slackers. In this case, we've got like 15 slackers and with no tickets assigned to them, right? So this is a really neat, quick place for a manager to pop into the workload report and go, whoa, you know, so-and-so's got way too many tickets. Let's take some stuff off their plate. But let's say, you know, Vicky's got, you know, 20 tickets or something like that. And maybe 5 of them have breached SLA. We can click on that and see those tickets at a glance. And maybe we pop those open and the manager's like, oh, that's no big deal. Those are all waiting on the customer or something like that. Like this one's waiting for customer. Oh, they're fine. They're not really overloaded. So it's kind of a two-step process to check out, you know, one, how many tickets do they have, but you can also click on them to see if they're really relevant. And so that's a really important 2-step process there to be able to evaluate workload. It's a really valuable report to have. The next one is the satisfaction report. So we can set up the service desk out of the box to send a satisfaction report or basically request to customers to say, hey, can you fill in your level of satisfaction with our service? And that'll automatically populate here into this report. And so we can see, you know, reaching back pretty far, we can update our custom, you know, time frame to see how we're doing. And then we can actually set this up on a agent by agent basis and see, you know, we can see for these agents, you know, if a specific agent had a report come in that was just kind of rough, we can meet with them and go, hey, you know, are you okay? You know, what happened with this ticket? Maybe it's just a difficult customer, and you can kind of talk through like, hey, it's okay. You know, your value as an agent is not defined by this one customer. You know, have those conversations, and you've got that information right at your fingertips here, which is really valuable. Below that, we've got some deflected and resolved reports. Request deflected, again, comes back to this article concept. So if a request is deflected in the portal, you'll see that. And if it's due to an article view in the portal, you'll see that. And so you can track these deflected requests going back, you know, again, as far as you want. You know, by the last month, we can see just all these, you know, okay, we have a lot of article views, but we have about half the deflections as we have article views, which means we've got a bunch of people viewing articles, but still submitting a request, which means we need to improve our articles. And this gives you basically a good metric for how good your knowledge base articles are. Are they really solving the problem? Because the title of this article is attracting views, right? But people are still submitting tickets. Why? And you can start to trace those pieces of information. And then lastly, we've got this up in the top, we've got this request resolved, which is basically going to say, okay, we've got 4 requests that resolved with an article, which means either they found the article after they submitted the ticket, or the agent actually sent them an article as a comment and that resolved the ticket. Great. We've got requests resolved without an article. That's a lot of requests. We get a ton this day. We can click on that day, scroll down here and see all these. And if we look at them, we go, well, none of those were really relevant to an article. So that makes sense. That's okay. And then we got 14 requests deflected in the portal, which means a request was not created. Somebody accessed the portal, looked at an article and said, that's all I need. I don't need to submit a request. You want this number to be as high as possible and this one to be as low as possible, obviously. So things to keep in mind there. Below that, we've got our what's called custom reports. These are reports that we can edit, update, and we can even create brand new reports. And so if you come down here to, like, let's say just a general created versus resolved, this is basically saying, over the last year by month, how many tickets were created, that's your red line, and how many tickets have been resolved. So right now, if you go all the way up to December, 3 were created, 1's resolved. So we're kind of consistently behind a little bit here. And so this is a good report to kind of keep in mind, and you can see month by month your numbers there. We've got our time to resolution SLA report, which basically says, this is our average. So for all issues, we average about 55 hours to resolve tickets. For incidents, we're just a little bit faster. That's great. So we're seeing that here. Now, if we look at the SLA met versus breached, this is not so good, right? We've got a lot of tickets that have breached their SLAs here recently. And so you can see, day-to-day basis, month-to-month basis, how often you're meeting your SLAs versus how often you're breaching your SLAs. And that'll help you guide, what your SLAs actually are. So if you're consistently meeting them like all the time, maybe you should tighten them down a little bit and improve your level of service tracking. If you're constantly breaching SLAs, either, you've got a workload problem, you've got too many tickets coming in for the number of agents that you have, or you've got a process problem. Maybe your workflows are too clumsy. Maybe you're not getting all the information you need in your forms from the customers. So your agents are having to reach back out to the customer over and over again to get information. Or maybe you just have bad SLAs. Maybe they're way too short for the types of requests you've got coming into the portal. So we'll talk about SLAs. We'll look at those here in a second, but just some really useful reports to keep in mind that are right out here available at your fingertips. Okay. So there's a few more. We won't dig into much more of them. They're pretty self-explanatory. And then of course we can create brand new reports, put in custom data series, name it however we want, filter it down however we like. And that's a feature that I really like in Jira Service Management. Okay. All right. So lastly, we're going to talk about, one more thing on the agent side, which is the customer list here. And so this is where we can manage customers. So in here, if we jump out here to the customer list, we can add users directly as customers. And they can be accessing the portal. And this is going to show us that list here. We can add customers explicitly up here in the top right, or we can add what's called organizations. And we've got a couple of organizations here. Organizations are collected lists of customers that can see each other's tickets essentially. And so let's say you've got, you're servicing, say you've got a product support portal that services a series of customers. And these customers are actually companies. You can set up an organization for each of those companies so that all of the customers for those companies can see each other's tickets. And it's a really great way to reduce the number of duplicate tickets that come in from a single customer. Basically, maybe you're supporting a product that goes down, you might get 30 tickets from that customer instead of one person submitting that ticket and sharing with the whole organization. So this is something really important to leverage here. And this is the best way to kind of silo your customers as far as view access, things like that. And then we can quickly come in here and see all the tickets from each of these that are in each of these organizations. So that's a kind of a nifty function as well. Okay, cool. So that's kind of all the stuff on the agent side. The last section I want to talk through some brief pieces of is the project administrator side. And this is going to be down here in this project settings button at the bottom left. Once we navigate into the project settings, you're going to see, if you're familiar with Jira, you'll see some common administration options here. Things like issue types, people, summary, people is where we control who has access to this particular project. The summary shows us all the different objects tied to this project. But I want to talk about the ones that are specific to Jira Service Management. The first is request types. So request types are the actual options of forms out there in the portal that your customers can fill out and submit. So when we look at these, we see all of our different types of requests, and they're categorized by those 4 different categories we talked about earlier: service requests, incidents, problems, and changes. And so first we'll see service requests. These are all our different types of service requests. Some of them are service requests with approvals. So a new mobile device requires an approval, a new laptop requires an approval. Those are expensive requests, right? But everything else, just getting a guest Wi-Fi account set up, none of that requires approvals, right? Below that, we've got our incidents section. We usually keep these pretty simple. It's either a system problem or it's a broken hardware problem, right? So those are gonna be our 2 main incidents. Pretty straightforward. It reduces the amount of effort to triage because it's very easy to tell, is it a hardware problem or a software problem, essentially. And so you can kind of break things down to that, make it that simple. Below that, we've got our problem types. So if something needs to be tracked or investigated. And this one you'll see is hidden from the portal because usually agents create problems. Users will see incidents. Agents will track the root cause of the problem. And then lastly, we've got our change request. In this case, we've only got one. Oftentimes that's all you need. But sometimes people want to split it up or have in different types of changes, things like that, especially if you have multiple types of products. Maybe you've got multiple production products and you want to have a different change request for each one with different form options, stuff like that. That could be a good reason to split this out into different request types, okay? And then you can control out in the portal, you control what groups they show up, these different requests show up in. We had a question earlier about how do we see, or how do we provide options to users to transition their own tickets, like resolve it, close it out. And this shows up when we go into the actual request type. We can see right up here, workflow statuses. And we can control, right here, we can control how a customer sees a status. So in this case, we can show, okay, if it's in review, they can see review. I think all of these match. Let me pick one that, well, but like, let's say you don't want a customer to have, transparency into your process. You could just change all of these to show in, show in progress. Instead of showing authorized, it can just be in progress. You can kind of reduce the transparency there so that they're not just seeing your raw backend process. It's a nice way to clean that up. As far as giving them the ability to transition tickets, that's done out on the workflow. So I'm going to go ahead and jump out here. It's going to go into the workflow side. Now we're editing the actual workflow for a change request. So this is a pretty standard change workflow. You'll see that there's different paths, whether it's a standard change or a normal change, things like that. You can bypass some approvals. But the key here is, let's say we want to give the option for a customer to cancel the ticket or something like that. There's this mark as canceled transition. We can go over here and we can actually allow this transition to be shown in the customer portal. If we do so, a customer will be able to cancel a change. So let's say they submit a change request and you want them to be able to cancel it if they see a problem with it or realize they no longer need it. That's this checkbox right here. It's in the workflow editor. So you have to be a Jira administrator to do so. You cannot just be a project administrator. That's a key point. That's a different permission. And this is as deep as we'll go into the Jira administrator side. But that's just something to keep in mind, that's where that little checkbox there will allow a customer to see that particular transition when they're in this particular status, okay? So keeping that in mind, I'm gonna go ahead and discard this draft here, this workflow draft, and we'll jump back out to the project. Okay, and the last project setting that I wanna talk about is, and there's a lot in here, so we won't cover everything today, well, there's actually I'm gonna cover 2 more. I'm going to talk about portal settings first. So the portal settings, this is your portal configuration menu. You can name your portal. You can set that URL here for that portal. Now you can't unfortunately do too extensive of edits here. They don't support it, but you can copy that out and you can see that portal URL pretty handy here. Now Atlassian is working on for later next year the ability to do custom domains, but that's not out yet, unfortunately. So we can't make those changes yet. You can name it, you can add some introduction text, we can add logos, we can add announcements, and we can choose whether or not agents can, like just a regular licensed agent can make an announcement on the portal if that's only a project administrator. Usually that's just a project administrator function. And then we can customize the help center itself, and this will take you actually out to the portal, allow you to change colors, fonts, text, all that stuff out there, and put a big banner up there that's like your company branded stuff. The second piece of portal settings is our groups. And if you remember, when we navigated to the portal, we saw these various groups. This is where we can create groupings of request types, and we can select which request types are in which group and in what order. And so that's where this guy lives. This is that portal group section under portal settings. And then the last thing I want to talk about here, and there's a lot to touch on. And so if you have any other questions, of course, feel free to reach out. But Brian will touch on a lot more of this stuff next week on Thursday. Last thing we'll talk about is SLAs. These are your service level agreements, right? If you're not familiar with an SLA is basically your agent's commitment to how fast they will achieve a certain objective. So in this case, we've got time to resolution, basically saying we are committing to, as a service organization, resolving your ticket in 4 hours if it's an incident, 8 hours if it's a service request, and we're not committing to any target for anything else like change requests, things like that. Change requests are one you usually don't have an SLA tied to, simply because they can be, so wide open. They could go in, dozens of different directions. They could require a lot of time to build. So we usually wouldn't tie an SLA to those, but you can if you would like to. Below that, below the goals section, which is basically what that time goal is, we can also set a calendar. You can customize this calendar. You can customize it to your organization. You can import holidays, things like that. And this is basically just saying that this 4 hours will only be counting during, between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. It won't count overnight. So if somebody submits a ticket at midnight, the SLA will not expire until 1 p.m. essentially the next day, because it doesn't start counting until 9. So at 9, you get 10, 11, 12, 1 o'clock is when it'll expire. And then 8 hours, same thing. That means it won't expire till 5 p.m. the following day. Gives you a full work day to work that ticket. Below that, we've got our conditions. And this basically says, okay, it's going to start counting. This time to resolution is going to start counting when an issue gets created or a resolution gets cleared. This basically means a ticket gets reopened. You want the SLA to start counting again if it gets reopened. Below that, we've got when it pauses. So if we put it in pending, that usually means we're blocked by somebody external. We'll drop it in pending, the SLA will stop, because it's not our agent's responsibility. This is really important to keep in mind. If there's tickets come in and your agent has no control over the progress of that ticket, you do not want your SLA counting against them. That's unhealthy, and it leads to a stressful work environment where they're just going to be constantly breaching SLAs because they're waiting on some other group to give them a piece of information. So make sure that you have a pending status, and then make sure it's not counting against them when they're waiting on the customer. This is the other status we pause this SLA during. So if they respond to the customer and the customer doesn't respond for 4 days, we don't want the SLA to expire. That doesn't make sense, right? And then we'll finish counting. We'll close this SLA when a resolution gets set, right? Below that, we've got a few more. We got time to first response. This is a pretty important one. For incidents, our time to first response is only 2 hours. Service requests, it's 4. And then all remaining, there's no SLA there. Same thing, starts counting when an issue gets created, but this time, since it's only a first response, it'll stop as soon as a comment gets made for a customer, as soon as it enters the status waiting for customer, or the resolution gets set, like it gets canceled or something like that. It'll stop the SLA. And a couple more. Time to close after resolution. We were talking about if a customer says, oh yeah, this is resolved, and then comes back and reopens the ticket, we can see how long it took to actually fully close the ticket after it was resolved. And then we've also got this extra SLA, which we didn't see already because we didn't submit a change request, but basically saying, how long does it take a change request to get through the initial review, which is when it gets approved and moved into implementation status. This basically says if a ticket category is change and it's a normal change, we want to say we're committing to 40 hours, basically 1 full work week, to review the change and get that back out to the customer. Okay. So those are your SLAs. You can add custom SLAs by clicking Add SLA. If we do so, we can name it. We can say what our goals are, what calendar we want to use, 9 to 5 or 24/7. Maybe we're a 24/7 support organization. We want to add our conditions, start counting at this time, pause if this happens, and finish when this happens. And we can save those SLAs and build as many as we want. So that's SLAs for you. So we've got this Q&A section you'll see down at the bottom of the call. As you guys have questions, please feel free to pop open. I want to save this last 8 minutes or so for questions if you guys have them. So go down to that Q&A section down at the bottom and go ahead and submit any questions you might have about what I've covered kind of so far, or just anything else related to Jira Service Management, and I'll answer them as best I can. But for now, that's all I'm going to cover on Jira Service Management. We're running out of time here. So please go ahead and submit any questions if you have them. And I can, if you need me to recap or things like that, I can do so. We did have one question I mentioned earlier about how do we give the ability to a customer to transition, and I showed you guys that's on the workflow. There's that little checkbox, so that guy got answered live. So yeah, I know there's a good number of people on here. Do you guys have any questions? If you do, go ahead and submit a question down in that Q&A section. I'll give you guys a second to fill that out. And then again, just to reiterate, next week, Thursday, Brian is going to go over a more in depth about more of the advanced functions in Jira Service Management that includes, incident management, service management, and change management processes, as well as integrations with other products, things like that. So that's a pretty neat webinar. And if you're interested in like the ITSM, it's called Jira Service Management for ITSM. And so it's really talking about the ITSM process and what that looks like for an IT team. But I do want to stress that this tool is useful for more than just an IT team, and that's evidenced by, you setting up facilities service desks that have their own, facilities related request types, like, report a maintenance issue, request a move, things like that. This tool is so flexible that it's so useful for so many different types of teams. So don't feel like you're pigeonholed into it only being useful for an IT team, because the customization enables a lot of different options. All right, so we got a question. What's the best way to view SLAs week to week, reports or dashboards? Does the JQL need to specify that the ticket was created in the last 7 days, or can you just filter in the UI? Actually, that's a great question. The nice thing is we can actually filter in the UI. So I'm going to jump back to our IT service desk and go to reports. And in here, this is definitely the place to do anything related to reporting, because you've got all these pre-created ones and you can update these as needed. So if you just want to see maybe your SLA success rate on a month-to-month basis, you can basically see each of your SLAs and you can see tracking percentage. Basically, this is a demo service desk, so these are pretty poor success rates. But you can see last 7 days, you can expand it, and then you can do a custom range here. And we could jump in and just say, okay, for if we jump back a few months here from there and then till now specifically, how have we done? Okay, we're running 5% success rate. That's pretty bad. But for a real, these are just tickets we create, and then we do so many demos in this instance. Ideally, you would see something closer to the 90s or even 100% success rate. And then what else we can do if we just do, let's just go past year by week. You can see it, week to week basis, and this allows you to drill down. You can actually click on each of these data points here and instantly see one work week. So let's say, we had pretty good success, 100% success rate here. You can click that week, and right down here, you can see all the tickets that are relevant to that SLA for that particular week. So this is a pretty neat report. This is where I would go. And then you can actually go ahead and export this as a CSV straight out, and you can throw it into an Excel sheet, maybe, where you got some custom formatting that you want to track, and you can export all this data with one click, which is pretty great. And then further, if you want to, you can create a custom report. If for some reason that's not giving you what you need, or you can add data series surrounding your SLA. So maybe you care about, we'll just say your time to resolution average, right? We can pull in time to resolution average, and you could filter by what type of request types. That's a pretty common one. Is like, okay, how long is it taking to resolve new laptop requests, or how long is it taking to resolve VPN problems? Are we having, you can see those bottlenecks start to build up, and that's a really So it's really good to leverage these custom reports. And you can customize the JQL there. Of course, you can get specific. You can customize it just using a specific goal off of an SLA or something like that. So you get your 4 hours or your 8 hours. So you can say like, okay, how well are we doing for this SLA versus for this goal versus this goal? So yep, hopefully that's helpful there, Ian. My company is switching to Jira ITSM from a different ticket system, and we were wondering if it was possible to import the data from our old system into Jira or some apps that work with Jira ITSM. Absolutely. So Jira Service Management, just like Jira, supports CSV imports as well as other different functions, import functions. And so what we would do is we would set up or take an export from your old system, format that CSV to basically have all the columns that we need to have a successful import. And then we bring that CSV import into Jira, and you'd be able to just take off, hit the ground running in Jira with all your old tickets right there. Oftentimes people are moving out of an old system because it's too cluttered and it's just is poorly organized or something like that. And in those cases, what we would recommend is keep your new service desk clean and only have, new tickets created there, and then create a second project that's an archive project for your agents to reference, where they can go in there and search through previous tickets for information or historical information, things like that. And it keeps your audit trail. That way you don't, if you get audited or you keep that audit log healthy, and you got all your tickets, all your historical tickets there. So I would keep that in a, often I think it's about split 50-50, whether it goes into an archive project separate from your main service desk, or it goes into your new service desk. Because a lot of people, it's best to keep that new service desk as clean as possible. So cool. But yes, absolutely, is a yes to that question. You could totally import data from an old system into Jira. Cool. All right. Well, that's pretty much all the time we've got today. Thank you guys for joining this Jira Service Management Fundamentals webinar. Hopefully it was helpful. And please feel free to reach out to the team@expium.com email. I'll send that in the chat real quick. If you guys have any questions, and we are more than happy to help you with any of that. We do classes and consulting, so either one, please feel free to reach out to that email, and the coordinators will help you out. And then, Ian asked, can we have access to this recording? This guy, or there is actually a previous one on YouTube already on the Expium YouTube channel. So if you jump onto YouTube and you just search for Expium, you'll find our channel. All of these webinars end up on YouTube. Yeah. So, and I'll shoot in, I can shoot out an email to you, or the team can when it does come out. But yeah, YouTube is definitely the best place to go to see all of these webinars historically, as well as future ones. We've got a lot of videos on there about different products, different, best practices, governance, all that jazz. So yeah, definitely check out the YouTube channel. I sound like a YouTuber. And feel free to like and subscribe. And we hope to see you guys next time. Have a good one.